Amy Andrews. Amy is an award-winning USA Today best-selling Aussie author who has written 84 contemporary romances in both traditional and digital markets. She has sold over 3 million books and has been nominated for a RITA, the highest award of distinction in romance fiction in the US, 3 times. She has finaled in the Ruby competition, the Premier Award for Romance in Australia 5 times and won 3, as well as being nominated for many Australian Romance Reader Association awards, including Favourite Australian Romance Author, which she took out in 2020. She's been published by Entangled Publishing, Tule Publishing, Harper Collins, Momentum, the digital branch of PanMacmillan Australia, Escape Publishing, Harlequin, Mills and Boon in both their medical and KISS lines. She has been translated into over 20 international markets, including manga. She's written books for the Bold and the Beautiful franchise, dabbled in self-publishing and co-authored 2 books with her sister. In 2019, she was given a life membership status to Romance Writers Australia, an organisation that she's been heavily involved with for over 20 years, including 2 as president. She's on the organising committee for the Capricorn Coast Writers Festival. She's run a manuscript assessment service, appeared on panels, run workshops for festivals, conferences, and mentored emerging writers for various organisations. One of her books was recently selected for the Queensland Writers' Centre Adaptable program to pitch to Australian producers and directors for adaptation into film. Amy was a registered nurse for 28 years, 21 of those as a paediatric intensive care in the paediatric intensive care unit of the Royal Children's Hospital in Brisbane. She has worked in the UK in both adult ICU and CCU. She retired in 2015 to concentrate solely on her writing. As you can imagine, her medical romance have truly authentic settings. Let's hear more from Amy about how she became such a successful and prolific author.
I wrote my first book in 1991 at the age of 22. I was freezing my butt off in my first English winter and temporarily unemployed. The temp didn't go above 1 degree a week and there were frozen cobwebs clinging to our gutter. I needed something to do that didn't involve getting off my electric blanket while I waited on job interviews. Remember, there were no iPhones or computers back then, and a TV in a bedroom was not a luxury we could afford. So what could I do? I know, I thought, I'll write that book that's in my head. Until that moment, I hadn't known there was a book in my head. No, I wasn't one of those authors who always knew they were a writer and always wanted to write a book. Frankly, it had never occurred to me that that was an actual viable thing to do with your life, which is of course absurd because there were books and somebody had to be writing them, right? Of course, now I recognise I always had books in my head. I just thought I had what all my teachers used to say, an active imagination. And how on earth they made that sound like a bad thing, I have no idea. Anyway, I did it. I wrote 5K a day for 10 days. Longhand, again, no computers. In fact, we wouldn't have a PC in our house until a few years after that, and I actually wrote my first 5 books longhand. That book I didn't even know I had inside my head just flew out of me. I couldn't write fast enough for the pressure of words wanting to come out of my brain. It was a romance. I'd always been a reader and read across genres. The kind of kid that finds one author they love and then gloms everything in their backlist. I vividly remember going through an Alistair MacLean phase when I was 13. But I had always loved romance and read a lot of them, stealing my mother's sexy red books from about the age of 12. So I'd written this book, this brilliant, amazing piece of literature that was going to make me $1 million and get me an instant film deal. Now what? I knew I wanted to submit it to Harlequin, Mills and Boon because A, if I was going to get my romance novel published, I wanted it to be published with the biggest romance publishing house in the world. And B, in 1991, they were pretty much it. So I had to get it typed up by someone, which meant I had to rewrite it neatly and edit it as I went so she could have a cohesive, legible manuscript, not a notebook full of chicken scratch. That cost me £100. I kid you not. Then I snail mailed it to London, and I waited for 9 months, which was how long it took back then, after which I got the standard rejection letter of 2 lines, thank you, blah, 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 not enough emotional punch. As gutting as that rejection was, I thank the universe every day for that book and that rejection, because that's what made me a writer. That's what put the rod in my spine. It made me think, right, I'm going to show you. I'm going to write a book and then you'll buy it if it kills me. This was a great lesson. Rejections aren't always bad. They feel terrible for sure, but that one just made me bloody minded and determined to become this thing I never even knew I wanted to be, never even knew that I had in me. So fast forward a couple of years and I'm back in Australia and I make it my mission to learn my craft. I'd accepted that I wasn't brilliant and I didn't know everything just because I read a lot and that I needed some help. So I joined Romance Writers of Australia and found the most wonderfully supportive people who got me. And I read how-to books and I went to conferences and I attended workshops and I entered competitions and I started a critique group. And I kept writing and I kept submitting and I kept getting better. 12 years it took me to get that call from Harlequin and Boon in 2004. 12 years. I call it my apprenticeship. It just took me a little bit longer than most. As an aside, my mother actually played a pivotal role in my writing career, though neither she nor I realised it at the time. My mum was incredibly intelligent, but like many women of her era, she'd been forced to leave high school in grade 10 and get a job. She went on to complete her senior studies by correspondence when my sister was a baby and the other three of us were in primary school. As well as that, she was also tinkering with a book. She bashed away at a rickety old typewriter between looking after 4 little kids, a romance novel, a Mills and Boon that she was absolutely writing for publication. Now, she never did get it finished, little wonder with everything she had on her plate. But that obviously had a subliminal influence on me that has sort of been forgotten in the midst of time. I think a lot of people might get the idea to write a book, but dismiss it as too hard or not doable, or become overwhelmed with the nuts and bolts of the hows and the wheres. They compare themselves to others and think they're not good enough, they're not rich enough, they're not educated enough. But because of my mum tapping away on that typewriter, I knew when I finally realised that I too had a book in my head that I could do it. I didn't need anyone's permission or approval because my mother had done it. And you can too.